There's so many stories that are beautiful in video games. We have Ghost of Tsushima, seeped in historical beauty that is so good it gets respect from the country it's based in. The Witcher 3 combines political tension with morally grey characters with perfect character development, apart from the fact you can choose between Yen and Trish. Some beautiful stories moulded into the game from the foundation. But what about the underrated genre of beautiful stories? What about the horror games? When you look at horror games, I feel like most of the story is lost to things like trying to scare you and being horrifying and, well, just generally horrible. When you look around at different games though, some have the most beautiful environments that makes you feel like you can smell the story. And there's some that get you so scared that you have to hide under your desk or under the covers out of fear. Some foreshadowing there for you. But still you force yourself to continue because, like the worst movie ever, you watch it to know what happens at the end. But it all leads to the same place, the beauty of horror game stories. Before we begin, I didn't actually think we'd have to play horror games for this video, but went a bit like this. Ah, shit! Oh, sugar plums. No. Holy shit! So let's mumble about it. And I'll be hiding under here for most of the video. I have said many times the reason I get up in the morning is for a sweet, sweet video game story. In games you can have these massive open world full to the brim with stuff. But to me the beauties in these worlds would be the elements of stories and how they tell the stories through these worlds. Games like Elden Ring, Death Stranding and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom show these beautiful stories through open world and all that generic stuff. But what about horror games where most experiences go a little like this? There's a lot of horror games out there, so many beautiful ones, so let's start how these games show but don't tell their story. Classic rule in a lot of movies is show don't tell. It's also in books. I think it might be in more books actually. This being the fact the story should be shown through action rather than someone sitting on a table or a chair or a bed for 10 minutes of cutscenes and chatter. And to find out more information about this little nugget, I played Alien and I thought it would be fine because I enjoyed the film. Actually, I may hide here for a little longer, for reasons I don't want to discuss. And while I contemplate my life choices, the show don't tell rule, this means that nothing is told but here is shown through nightmares. Many games have this moment, but when you're a horror icon like the Xenomorph, you kind of already have that general information. A lot of the time, we get this type of reveal and it's usually with no context. It's just a big teethy beast and you don't know what it is. This is where the trademarked corridor doo-doo-doo scare scene, aka the corridor scene is. So the only story we really have is the walls, kind of answering the question if the walls could talk. Take Outlast for example. The whole first 10 minutes is basically a corridor scene with near nothing straight up told to you, and it's better than most horror movie introductions. But you know the part of the horror movie when you're kind of like watching a slasher and they sometimes take 20 minutes of backstory and you haven't saw anyone get slashed in them 20 minutes and we're bogged down by boring characters that are going to die anyway? Outlast boils that down to, this is for a video, the beauty of horror, and generally nervous playing these games. That shit! That shit! That shit! And remember to subscribe because I actually had to play horror games for this video. These moments aren't just perfect to give you the heebie-jeebies of jump scares or reveal that your wife is weirdly possessed by some weird ooze, what she also kind of created. But on the other hand, these like 10 to 20 minutes are some of the most perfect elements of storytelling in games. Take another corridor scene that puts the P in Resident Evil 7. Okay, this is the only Resident Evil game I haven't played, and after this, oh my god. Oh no. Holy shit. I know why, but this scene is kind of amazing for the story. Not only does it show what you will be going through, the dinner table you'll be strapped to with the moldy food, the house that has been abandoned and grown into this nightmare, a look at the past people who explored this house before you and found out what happened to them, and this really with kind of nothing, just exploring, looking at the environment as you pass through, just a skeleton there after playing a different character in the same area. There's a simple jump scare and no two. But apart from that, we just see the future horrors we're going to go through. And then it's cemented into your mind straight as you meet your monster of a wife. This all adds to this kind of great storytelling through the beauty of a horror game. There's obviously others like Bendy and the Inkman, and also PT that everyone talks about. But would all these tell a story without the greatest devil, the biggest devil in these games being the beautiful monster? At this point, I'm going to say to you to comment below your favourite horror game, because I'm more of a dip your toe into horror game. That's why I'm hiding here, because I'm scared. But comment below the horror game I haven't mentioned in this video. The horror monster can be anything from just a simple actual monster to something a bit more peculiar. Like the obvious monster, what you thought was an obvious monster in Until Dawn, what kind of looks simple on the surface level. It can be this terrifying nightmare of a creature. They all kind of feel simple on plain paper. Ink character has came to life. This is just a moldy, crazy family. An alien. A serial killer's mind. A crazy guy with a big head. Even your wife. When you look at all of them, and the simplest one is the alien, is kind of crazy and some may say beautiful. And that is horror, right? You can take this simple character just in a mask and turn it into this twists and turns type story. Going from this simple direction to something, well, nearer if anything, actually. Let's go back to the simple crazy family for a moment. A story so simple on paper has been done before in one of the most overrated horror movies out there. If the movie comes to mind, you know which one I'm talking about. Anyway, this family has such a kind of great story through Resident Evil 7. What started out was maybe just me thinking that the family basically was the problem. I haven't played Resident Evil for a while, okay? And it turned out that a sleepy gran, aka the child, was actually the main horror, the puppet behind the family. Even though it ended in a bad boss fight, the story was kind of stunning in its own way. Can you imagine another genre of game pulling this craziness off? Even in the movies they can pull this off, but only really in horror. It's like one of the first horror films I ever watched, Paranormal Activity, what scared the living shit out of me. Like on the ground floor, it's simple. Demon, found footage, dog, family, death. Demon possession. Then you go down this rabbit hole and you find out this story has so many different elements. And either watching all the movies or, well, going through all the wiki as I did, you don't want to ever go into a house again, because that's where it's set. What started off as a simple demon possession turned into witches and time travel, with some demon stuff still. Could you imagine any other genre doing this? By the way, I did this research at about 20 to 11 and kinda scared the shit out of myself. Nothing like a horror franchise to make you feel like you're being watched. Alongside this, you could Google a lot of horror games and go through this beautiful crazy story of the world and go full conspiracy tinfoil hat mode. A horror monster can become an icon on its own merit and turn into such a great story. Look at all the stuff that came from Poppy Playtime and Five Nights at Freddy. We have Five Nights at Freddy's movies now. What is mind-blowing. I've never been a Five Nights at Freddy kind of fan, but I enjoyed the movie. Even though I'm surprised that the game series hasn't truly inspired from the horror icon, so to speak. Make like a weird, like, you know, Zelda and Ganon type thing. It's a weird example to use for horror things, you know, when they keep on coming back. Like Halloween type feeling. You know, that kind of horror feeling? You know what I mean? You know what I mean. The monster in near all horror games kind of makes the game and therefore most of the story. A lot of the time as well, we don't have to see them. This is the true beauty of a horror game. The monster can be gone for hours, but the tension can rise through the so-called corridor scenes. But isn't every environment kind of a corridor in some way? This all leads to the horror environment, how some simple fog, blood and metal can lead to a glorifying story. I'm not going to go into the yellow paint argument, as I would be about a year too late, but there is a reason why I highlight some areas in the script yellow. But if I was going to talk about it, the biggest sign of a lazy game designer, especially in horror games, would be the yellow paint. They would go straight to the scary ass butchers at the beginning of Evil Within 1. Oh yeah, Resident Evil, I can kick a crate myself. If I miss it, I'll shoot myself in the foot and be happy. Thank you. Anyway, in general, I think in most games, the environmental storytelling is the most underrated way of storytelling in general. Mark that down as a video idea. I haven't got a pen down here. But when you look at the environment storytelling of horror games, it feels like that most of them, they're on another level. Like the other games are on like the heart eyes level of environmental storytelling, and horror games are like this icon level, like this scream level, like the horror icons. You get what I mean? Take what I'm currently playing, Alan Wake 2. I'm currently lost going back to Alan Wake 2 for this video, as I had completely forgotten about the game. This meaning I kind of went back with a fresh look through as I'm making this video. I'm currently going around the underground or subway or wherever you're from. That kind of grungy element in this subway that uses everything for the environmental design and story. It uses everything to its benefit of the design. It does confuse you even though it kind of has a clear direction. It seems like it adds elements of horror to kind of make you confuse your mind. It takes something that would be scary in real life, but it adds these spray paints, these creepy little elements of getting slightly lost. Even though it does kind of look like a normal subway, it would be scary, but the well-designed environment here adds so much to not just kind of your feeling playing it, but kind of the story of where this character really is as he kind of goes through what was a crime scene. I do think Alan Wake 2 though does have maybe some of the best environmental storytelling in any game for a while, any modern game for a while, but this could generally be more of a Remedy thing as Control did have these elements as well, but it works a lot better in a horror game like Alan Wake 2. Even in this big wide scope of horror games, indie games seem to brush this up to 100. Take a game like Dredge and Still Wakes in the Deep. Starting with Dredged. It's called Dredged, you know, the boat one. The way Dredge tells stories through many different means is to me maybe the main reason why this game blew up, because damn, it's not the gameplay. It can be just as subtle as exploring in uncharted waters and coming across from you shouldn't, to looking into new areas and finding a new village that is full-blown crazy pants. The location to fish, why are they weirder in different locations? What environmental thing shows this? The way it also tells the story of how to be fearful of the dark, what actually stopped me from fishing in the dark for way too long because I really didn't know what was going to happen if I did. This just being like a random yellow light in the darkness in that sea makes you double think and kind of panic of what is behind that watery door number 3. This with such a simple environmental design, being that in some areas you can see the bottom of the ocean and some you can't, always giving that feeling of what is down there, and already has cemented that kind of story in your head. You never know what is down there. Then it gives you them little hints and little shows of what could be down there, and it makes you even more scared. And that is near perfect environmental design to me. All these elements add dangerous feelings and excitement to this game, and not just a glorified minigame. Then we have the other side of the coin, where it Still Wakes in the Deep. What takes this already horrible environment and downright scary workplace, it's surrounded by water, people. It shows this through very tight squeezing through pipes and seeing the emptiness of the world around you, and then it brings this already chaos of the rig in the middle of the ocean, and then it becomes smaller with the introduction of a weird alien thing. Even though yes, if done right, this could be scary really anywhere. It could be horrifying in a city or a desert. The way this game's environment tells the story is horrifying to a point I'd give a warning before playing this one. There are other games in other genres that can tell this story through the environment, like the Souls games, well, mostly the Souls games. I do think Witcher 3 does a good job at it as well, but still they're quite small bits in between. When you're trying to stay alive, you kind of take a lot more of the environment in, so you kind of take more of the story, and because of that, a little spot in blood in a fast-paced action kind of game gets missed so quickly. But when it's slow-paced and the tension is building, you take that in, and that feeling that anything could kill you, that feeling of weakness, and then the environment feeds on that weakness to tell a story. And then this adds up into conclusion of you having this kind of fear for your life, and that is mostly due to the environmental design you are in, making it feel like anything can happen, and that is kind of one of the struggles I have in most games. Take Red Dead Redemption 2 for example. That game was great, but it kind of felt like nothing really could blow my mind. It's cemented in real world lore. While it feels like in a horror game, anything can happen at any point. It could be the fact this whole game takes place in someone's mind. It could be whatever this was. Let's use this as an example. If you combine some really good horrifying environment with a monster, you have a good ass story. Most likely a horror story. But what if you add the anything can happen feeling? Little Nightmares 2 has this type of beauty because I've played both of them and I still have no clue what is happening in the games. But it didn't need cutscenes really or long screens of lore. Instead we have monsters, environments through the gazoo. With this all added together, you still really had no clue what was happening next. Even though Simple Put is technically just a take on a dark childhood, it goes from you going against something with a gun to maybe one of the most scary horror monsters ever, and it just being a teacher. If you asked me what was going to happen in this game at the beginning, it would take me at least 20 tries to guess. Alan Wake and Evil Within both have this kind of feeling to me as well. Well, Alan Wake a slightly bit more. That's mainly because it's a Remedy franchise and they are all nuts, and they always have these moments from both Alan Wake that just make you go, what just happened? Evil Within, literally one of the most underrated horror games out there, and it should be Xbox answer to Resident Evil. Please make more of them. The fact we can go into Criminal Minds and look at their literally crazy levels of differentness. It should be on like game 5 and not game 2 and stuck there for what looks to be ever. You're in like an unhinged mind, what could lead to anything. Even though, yes, a lot of these experiences can happen in other games, the mix of anything can happen themes works so well even in the normal feeling games. Look at Outlast, that seems like it's cemented in reality, but it quickly grown to something much more interesting so quickly and so weirdly. The slow build as well from normal to wait, what the hell is that, is such an exciting concept for many horror stories. Look at games like Still Wakes in the Deep. That goes from kind of normal feeling scared of work, scary environment anyway, to aliens. Even though some games do pull the alien trigger, when in doubt, pull the alien trigger, I suppose. This kind of trope used in horror games adds to a very interesting experience in many horror games. What about the normal game that does everything by the book and then pulls out a horror level out of nowhere? There is no other genre so surprising as a horror level. Even though I would say in a lot of horror levels that have been added to the games, they could be used a lot more in the stories. I do kind of feel like they're lackluster. Story-wise, gameplay-wise, they're great. One being Hat in Time and the other being Batman Arkham Asylum. Maybe series, but mostly the original Asylum. Hat in Time is maybe the most surprising one here, as to say it simply, it's kind of a kid's game. It's amazing, but it is at its core kind of kiddie, as it's really shifts from a happy-go-lucky platformer to a general horrifying level. And the platforming is generally not that tough, but then it takes the mask off to reveal that your brother is the murderer. It really shows the beautiful horror genre as it kind of connects to you and completely changes your feeling of what is going on in this game. Another game that does kind of make sense in hindsight, but when it originally happened, it kind of shook you. Batman Arkham Asylum, even though really Batman has kind of connection to Christmas, but if Batman was a holiday, it would probably be Halloween, right? So how can you not think of horror? When I actually think of horror games and my first horror game, Batman Arkham Asylum might have been my first. Batman's use of horror was beautiful for the story and the experience. For a lot of the games, you felt like Batman. A room full of escaped criminals, hold my ginger beer. This happens in kind of two main elements in the Batman Arkham Asylum game. It is kind of missed in the next two sequels and the original Arkham Origins, there you go, got it in the end. The changes these two elements bring, especially the Scarecrow one, is kind of nightmarish. Maybe the Trucer boss fight was a bit rough, but the scene where you're poisoned by the fear toxin was so frightening. I do wish they improved the boss fight to make it feel like that as well, but that's just an Arkham Batman kind of problem through the whole thing. The boss fights are near perfect or the worst thing you've ever played. There's no middle ground there. There's either the Titan Clown or down in the sewer. Yep, I haven't forgot about him. TikTok Here Comes the Croc is another great horror element in the Batman game. However, unlike Scarecrow, it doesn't add much to the story apart from the fact that it's another element that really humanizes the Batman. So in fact, it does add to the story, thinking about it. When I look at other genres that have added horror levels, it does feel kind of like they are wasted, as a lot of it doesn't add to the story as it should. It feels like it could be a lot more of a bigger thing in games, maybe. Some honorable mentions here. I haven't played Little Nightmares yet. That looks like it continues kind of beauty of the style it has since the two other games. I don't know if they live up to the past two games, but that series as a whole could be the core of video game beauty. But there are some weird stuff with the studio, so I'm not that excited, so I'll check it out at some point. And another one that should be mentioned should be Silent Hill 2. I have recently saw spoilers, and I know it's an old game, but the twist really cements how beautiful a story can be in a horror game. All this research and playing different games has just made me fully fall in love with horror games. games. Like, I always flirted with the genre, but I've never dived right in, never went into a full relationship, never moved in, never offered the key to the house. But now I think it's time to settle down with the genre and think about playing it for the rest of my life. But what do you think? Comment below your favourite horror games. Give it an indie, give it like an obscure one, what people don't talk about down below. Comment below your thoughts of the video, like and subscribe for future mumble, and I will see you in the next mumble.